Welcome everyone to the Fate Dead ARPG podcast, episode number 147. We are deep into PoE2 Early Access, and this is the last episode of the year. So this is where we post our New Year's resolutions. Balor, do you have any already?
Hey, what? Stream more? Can I do that? I don't know if I can, but I'll try.
All right. And of course, to join us here for this spectacular last episode of the year, we got two cat enjoyers. Welcome with us, Neversink and MB Extreme.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone.
Yeah, how are you doing, Neversink? You working hard on that item filter, I assume?
Hey, Catmaster. Yes, exactly. I've been putting quite a bit of work into that over the past days and weeks, and to be quite honest, I think I could have been done with it quite a bit earlier, but actually I've been enjoying the game a lot more than I expected, and I've been expected to enjoy it a lot, so I've been constantly distracting between my will to play the game and my will to work on the filter, but now I'm much more on the filter and filter blade side, so I'd expect to finish that up in 1 to 2 weeks.
Yeah, well, I mean,
You
obviously...
tell people that. I never realized how much hell it would be without filter blade working. It's hell. I have a new appreciation.
Thank you. Well, my ETA right now is around 2 weeks for filter blade, and most of its features to come online. Economy filtering will take a while more because the GG APIs are down, but yeah, everything else is pretty much prepared, and I'm wrapping up the work on the basic filtering this week.
Thanks a lot for your work, by the way. Like, we all really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Glad you guys are enjoying it. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it myself. But yeah, it obviously one necessitates the other, right? Like, you couldn't make a good filter without playing the game beforehand and knowing what the experience is like in Endgame and what needs to be shown, what needs to be highlighted. Mm-hmm. I think that's very important that you put in that gaming time. Yeah. So, MB Extreme, how are you doing?
Quite fine, I would say. Just a little bit playing too much and just escaping reality, I would say, for the past like 3 or 4 weeks by now. And I should play less. That's what I noticed. That's my New Year's resolution, by the way. Play less video games.
Balor is gonna play more, and you play less.
Play more.
I can't, dude. It's like average of like 12 hours a day, man. It's
them rookie numbers. Gonna bump them numbers up.
I'm old.
Well, I guess we're gonna jump right into the middle, and Balor, you have an issue at heart that you wanted to discuss on the podcast, where you had a little frustration.
I had the worst experience today. It's the first time I have disliked PoE2. I have a character that's level 92, another one that's level 90, and now one that's halfway through 94. Right, so that's quite a lot of playing.
That is rookie numbers, dude. That is rookie numbers.
Wait, how many do you have?
Like 7 characters or so.
Yeah, are they in the 90s
though? I mean, my current character is 96.
Ooh,
and the other ones are like 88, 85, 81, 80, something.
So all higher than my main.
But after all of that time, I finally got my first King of the Mist. And I was like, man, this is really the right move to sell this because it's 7 fucking divines. But I can't. I need my points. And it's the first one. How hard could it be? Turns out, really easy. It took like 2 seconds to get him to 20%. But then he did force me downstairs into the wisp area. And then the first wisp led me into a straight up dead end. Tons of room to run around, tons of time to run around. There was no way out. Run all the way back to the start, find another wisp at the edge of my screen. Run over to it. That wisp leads me back to the start again. This is now the 3rd time I've been here. There are no more wisps on screen. I can't see the exit. There's no way out. And after another 20 seconds, I die. And there's just nothing. No one in my chat has any idea where the exit was either. And so
That is
Oh, my first
100%
points.
how my first mists went as well. Like, I found it finally in the ritual,
horrible.
and this is exactly what happened.
So for my first attempt, not only did I fail what should have been an easy fight for me, having never seen it before, I'm down 7 divines. That's a huge amount of currency. I'm down 7 divines. And even looking back through it, and the people in chat were like, I don't know where you were supposed to go. I didn't see an exit. The wisps led you to dead ends. Like, what was I supposed to do there? Now, for me, is that a huge deal? Well, it's very annoying, but like,
There's ways to get around it, though.
like, I'm gonna make money, right? Like, it's okay, it's fine that I lost 7 div, but like, oh man, I thought the point was accessibility to new players. I'm a new player with like 20 exalts in my inventory total, and I'm like, I'm gonna run this thing because I really like bosses, and I fail like that and find out how much that token was worth. I just quit the game. I'm just done, right? Like, if I'm a new player, I'm just done at that point. I'm like, oh, that was bullshit. Bye.
There is a way around it, though. If you have a party member waiting in hideout, and you go down to intermission, as soon as you land downstairs, you click on this like teleport to other player. So you spawn in the hideout, you go back into the mists, and then you skip the intermission. Then he just has a role play, and then he goes phase 2. So you
so the solution is to cheese it.
Yeah.
Oh no, this is terrible.
The solution
This
should
makes
be,
it even worse.
Yeah, the solution should be it doesn't have a monetary value or isn't tradable. Those are the first points. They shouldn't be trade. I shouldn't have lost 7 divines.
I mean, what I did then, because the thing is, like, you need those points. They make your maps more profitable. So you spend the same amount of time, but you just get more currency. And I did the same thing. It was like day 4 or 5. I finally had the King of the Mist, exactly like you did. You know, I did stage 1. I failed the intermission. I died, and I lost 5 divines or whatever it was worth back in the days. And in the other hand, you could just buy a carry. So you pay 2 divines for the carry. The carry is gonna like give you his invitation more or less, so you can get it in your atlas. So you pay a total of 8 divines, and he kills it 4 times for you. You don't get the loot, but for 8 divines, you get all the 8 skill points, making your mapping more profitable. And that's what I did with the breach stones as well, because I did the first one was easy. The second one was I did it, but I was like, man, that was close. I don't know if I can do the third one, but I don't want to waste 2 divines per breach stone, what it was back in the day. So I'd rather ask a friend that is a boss carry, like, hey, can you carry me 3 and 4? And then I get the Atlas points, and now my breaches drop like in the normal maps like 100 splinters, so I can produce way more breach stones, make way more currency, and they don't have to deal with the bosses. It is so mandatory. But as you say, like, breaches are easy to get, right? But the mists, the King of the Mist is not easy, and yet I have never found the logbook either. And Simulacrum, I heard, is way more difficult than any other content in game. So before even trying, I'm like, okay, Simulacrum is 4 divines. I'd rather just buy 4 carries, and it's safe, and I profit in my mapping, so I make more currency. It's like the intention to try it is not there anymore because the stones are so expensive.
I was talking about earlier, this is the one part I don't like, is that I think the first 3 sets should be quests, and only the 4th one should be a tradable token on all of them. So they should also be handed out quite a bit earlier as quest items, right? Like, say by the time I've collected 100 splinters, roughly, I should have a breach thing to do the first quest, right? And be like, and then the fail state of that, just like in PoE1, should be, oh, I failed that breach encounter. The next breach I hit should be just guaranteed to drop me a new quest invitation for that first level.
Yeah, maybe
and then
similar.
The first 3 could be like that on all the mechanics, but then the last one is the tradable token. I can be like, you know what? I don't enjoy breach. This is not something I want to do. I'm going to sell that off. I don't want to do that.
Maybe similar like the trials, you know, the first one, the quest trial, where you get like level 22 or something. Like, if you die, the token is still there. You can reopen and progress it. Because what you would do in PoE1, since you have 6 portals, right? So, hey, I got the boss. I'm going to try it. And after 3 portals, like, I don't think I can do this. So I'm going to ask a friend to help me with this so I don't lose it, right? But you still had, like, chances to try to progress this. In PoE2 with this one portal politics, whatever,
Yeah.
hey, one fail and 7 divines is gone. Do I want to
It is-
risk it? I don't think so. So I'd rather buy a carry. So
It
or
is
sell
the
it.
first time I've disliked the game, though. Everything else has been great. So but this first time is like, I'm like, this is garbage. I'm like, this is not right.
No, I think this is like a thing that generally holds true for a lot of people. Told me that during the acts they really enjoyed the more engaging boss fights and the more engaging moment-to-moment fight. Once they got into mapping, that part fell away, and they just felt like it were basically way too few bosses, and the moment-to-moment gameplay way too much like PoE1. And then when I think about it, like, yeah, there's so many cool bosses in the game, in Endgame, that you theoretically could do, but they're all at the very top end to reach, and it's very, very unrealistic that you go into them when they're, like, actually a challenge, because then you can lose them. And then you're over, like old hardcore where we played, right? Where you overgear to the point that you know it's trivial before you go in, because you don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
Like,
because of the
economically
one portal
speaking,
thing.
unless you're racing, of course, right? Then it's a completely different story. But I would love there to be a lot of like easier and more accessible versions of endgame bosses, so you can learn the fight mechanics. They shouldn't be as rewarding potentially from an economic point of view from the drops, but at least there should be something that you can do if that's the kind of style of gaming that you enjoy, like the aspect of PoE, the boss fights. Because once you're done with the acts, there's a really big dry spell in boss fights. But never think, you're having an insightful facial expression the entire time. I'm sure you have something meaningful to say about this.
I have a lot of mixed feelings about it, but I generally agree to the sentiments that have been said here. First of all, I think I'm one of the people who says that I think the one attempt per map or one attempt per boss is a good thing. I like it. But there's kind of like a big asterisk to that. I like that you have to defeat a boss in one go. I do not like that you
Yes.
only have one attempt on a boss. And I'm not sure if you fought the Arbiter, the final boss. I'm pretty sure most of you have already encountered them.
No.
Okay, so I did this boss with my self-found keys. And then I got destroyed by the first one-shot mechanic that looked exactly the reverse that you need to do. So I'm gonna spoil just this one. I don't think anyone will actually be very mad about this one. Like there's sometimes mechanics like an orb on the floor, and you have to not stand in this orb. And this turned out to be the reverse. So you have to stand everywhere except in the orb. And it looked exactly like the one where you need to stand outside. So it instantly killed me. And then it turned out that he has a whole bunch of other one-shot mechanics. And then I actually kept buying the keys because bossing is one of the fun things for me. And I spent like 9 divines or something like that to just kill the boss fight. And I did get a decent drop and I enjoyed it. But I think there's 3 to 4 different one-shotty mechanics. I would say if you would put like 100,000 players who can't one-shot burst the boss, and all of them would start the boss blindly, I would be surprised that if one single person would defeat the boss without knowing it before that. There's such an amount of extra knowledge required on this specific boss fight in order to survive it. There's just no way. There's some things that are not even unintuitive. They are psychologically abusive. They are using tricks to trick you into doing the wrong thing. So you need to actually know that the boss will try to bait you into stupid things so that you one-shot you. And if you don't know this, you're dead. So I would be okay with this mechanic if there would be like 6 attempts per boss, but you have to restart him with full HP there. I would be okay with that. And there's also the secondary part that I see. So the same applies, of course, to the King in the Mist. And the secondary part that I really feel problematic about. First of all, I hate the concept of carries. I think the whole idea that you're basically the best way to play is to buy a carry from someone else instead of spending the keystone yourself is very bad. And I also really dislike the idea that the keys you're getting are best farmed at the highest difficulty. So this makes the soul situation even worse. If you get the breach stone, that you're doing the breach stone on 0 difficulty, you're losing money. You're just guaranteed losing out on currency. So I really think they need to. They done it with PoE1 where they put the Uber keys on the tree, and it's been terrible. And I feel like we are back to this stage, but now we have like 4 keys instead of 1 per encounter. So this is something that definitely needs to be changed. I think I also agree. I think the first keys need to be repeatable, easier to approach, non-farmable. The reward there needs to be low, but they can give you a chance to get your nodes on the tree much faster. Because I still haven't. I'm not paying for the key for the King of the Mist key because I want to find it myself. I haven't found it. I have zero ritual points. I have 2 levels 93 characters. I have 0 expedition points because I found 5 logbooks and none of this contained the boss. I have 0 delirium points because I have the 100 delirium splinters. I did kill the Reach boss like 6 times in his final form, and it was fun, and the Arbiter boss once. But I feel like the access to the keys is too rare. 1 attempt per boss fight is way too unnecessary brutal, at least on the lower difficulties. The one-shot mechanic shouldn't be there or should be taught to you in the lower difficulties. And then you please stop using the same key for like the multiple divine drop boss fight and for the beginner boss fight. All right, it's been a big rant. It's one of my bigger troubles with PoE2 right now. I think there's a lot to like, but the whole bossing aspect in the endgame is balance-wise bad. Combat is actually mostly good.
I'm doing great, and actually almost all the points here, because I'm sitting in the same boat where I'm saying like I still have this like quest open where I get my last 2 skill points for the passive tree, you know, killing the Arbiter for the first time. I have done hundreds of maps. I had 2 citadels. The first one I failed because I didn't even realize it was a citadel, you know, and I was like, hey, that looks cool. Just, you know, and then I was like,
sure.
Okay. So I had 1 boss kill in a citadel that dropped me 2 fragments. I sold them because they were like a divine each or something, right? So now I know citadels are insanely rare and I'm mapping a freak ton of, right? I'm even putting like T50 maps in my towers because somebody said that has a higher chance of spawning citadels and I don't know, all kinds of things. I know if I want to do,
but okay,
it doesn't. Yeah, but
yeah, somebody said it, so I was like, yeah, whatever. I'm over sustaining maps anyway, so
yeah.
Then I checked the market and I was like, okay, if I want to get the Arbiter, I need those 3 fragments. And in total, you have to pay like 4.5 divines to get 1 attempt on the Arbiter. I do believe that maybe I have enough damage already that I can one-shot the boss and get my last 2 skill points.
Quite possibly.
But do I want to risk it? Because 4.5 divines is 4.5 divines. I'm not talking about killing it on T5 and get the Arbiter skill points, because for a mapper, I don't care about those because I think they only affect the Arbiter itself. But the first time you kill it, the quest one gives you still 2 points, which can empower or get higher levels on your maps or something like that, which is definitely a thing to do. So I'm like, okay, I have 10 divines in my stash. I think I'm just going to buy the fragments for divines. I'm asking a friend that will just one-shot me. I get the 2 points and I continue mapping because I have no incentive to even try it, because if I fail it, because I have never done it before, so the chance of failing it, either I one-shot it or I might die. Okay, that's 4.5 divines done. So I'll try it again, I guess, because now I know I need to stand in the middle. But the boss, I know that, has more one-shot mechanics, but I've never seen them before. So I'm like, how many divines do I want to spend on this before I get back to mapping and need to farm that back? Or I'm like, hey, I have a friend that does like boss carry, so can you just bring me my 2 points and then I can go back to mapping because this is what I enjoy, and so I don't need to waste it, you know? So yeah, that's rough actually.
Yeah. And the worst part, even if you manage to kill the boss on your first try and to get everything done, it's good. You don't even get your money back because the drops from the 0 difficulty Arbiter are not good. There's like 1 drop that is all right if you get your corruption right and the rolls right, but no, that was
the thing before I even started that King of the Mist fight. I was like, this fight, even if I succeed, I lose.
Yes,
because I'm almost certainly not going to get a belt on the lowest difficulty. So even if I get my points, I'm still losing here. Like, it was still the wrong choice. That's the worst. That's currently feels like the worst thing about the end game right now.
You got 2 points, so that's an investment, right? So yes, no.
Well, I didn't.
For your future mappings.
I didn't though, because the wisps trolled me.
Oh yeah, true. I forgot about that part.
Yeah, so I'm still just down 7 div.
Yeah.
I wonder though whether that's like something that you could like realistically criticize about the fight design or balance of rewards versus entry cost, because I think especially in this early access situation the economy will always bring it to that point where the average return is slightly lower than the average investment.
So here's the thing though, I talked about this in my Talkative Try interview because he's talking to everyone. While I'm like 95% happy with PoE2, obviously there's tons of work to do, but like I'm 95% happy. The 5% of me that's not happy is a full list like the size of my arm of mistakes that we already solved in PoE1 that have just magically appeared again.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like-
I was gonna ask about that
Like-
because like, what do you think is the reason for this? Because undoubtedly, I mean, we've spoken to them in person and like we've heard them speak on so many podcasts. They're very talented people with a very high amount of passion for this game that they develop. And like, how can there be so many like little things that to us seem obvious to avoid? Having learned from PoE1, from the decade of PoE1.
Have only one answer that makes any sense. For a while, they've been split into PoE1 and PoE2. And so over the last 3 years, we've solved problems and fixed things in PoE1 that the PoE2 team just don't even know about. That's the only thing that makes any sense to me. Otherwise, why are we making the exact same thing a problem again when we already realized it was a problem and fixed it in PoE1?
I think it's time. I think quite honestly, the answer is one word. It's simply time. Those are mostly similar people and similar systems, similar code, similar approaches. But there's two things to consider there. First of all, the games are vastly different. The same system implemented in a different game may not result in a problem or may result in actually something good. We actually saw this with a lot of things in PoE2 where they implemented a couple of things that are very different in PoE1 and it actually works much better there. So I think I do believe they spent at most 6 months on the actual end game of PoE2, at most. Probably maybe even less. I think they didn't actually spend a lot more time on that. Most of the things there have been already existing, but they've been reusing system, they've been reusing approaches. For instance, the end game map of PoE2 is basically the Delph algorithm with a few adjustments. So I don't think they spent. Maybe I'll give it a year, but definitely not more. Like maybe they've been putting like modules for a year, but it's not They've not been very innovative there, and they've been actually perfectly okay with that. So they said, okay, we're gonna put a solution out, knowing that the 90% of the game will be reached. Well, let's put it this way: the whole campaign and 90% of the game will be reached by 90% of most of the player base. But this top tier gameplay part will be only available to very specific people who are usually experts anyway, and they will probably not quit PoE if we don't get the whole solution right now. So we're going to bring a few potentially decent solutions up, perfectly knowing that they will need some improvement anyway. So I think instead of trying to get things perfect, they wanted to get things okay in time and focus on other points. Like, have you seen the minion gameplay? I'm playing Witch right now. I'll be trying out every single class, and the minion AI. I'm really balancing my minion choice, and there's a lot of good minions based on the stupidity of the minions. I'm not playing arsonists because they clutter the screen. I'm not playing sniper, probably the best minion, because the AI is. I think I don't even think they are lacking a brain. I think we're also taking something out of their head because they're literally not capable of passing through a corridor.
A negative
and
brain.
if they're,
they don't like doors.
staying behind, they die. And then they have to respawn, so they don't even get teleported to you. So they knew that. It's not like they didn't know that. They are very talented, very ambitious, and very passionate developers. They just said, okay, we have a bigger issue there. Campaign Act 2 is not fun for new players. We have a bigger issue there. There's not enough skill diversity on the sorceress. We need to add more synergies there. So they're basically putting out existing non-perfect solutions, telling themselves this needs to be fixed in time, and actually players will try it out, and then we know more and better what exactly we'll expect. So now now that we play them, we provide them with very valuable feedback, and now they know much better
how to improve these things, because there might be good solutions there, but more importantly, they really know how the game feels and plays. So it didn't even make sense to try to get it perfect in the first place. I think they wanted to get it good in the first place. That would be kind of my approach there. I think this is what's going on, but yeah, I also agree. There's a lot of just PoE1 mistakes in PoE2.
Yeah, a lot of that makes sense, and when you think about it, it like tempers my upsetness, but also like
7 Divines.
well, also like 7 Divines though, and like it just I can forgive that on almost any problem that happens, except when it's something we clearly already did, like having the invitations for all the difficulties be exactly the same. Like we did that for a year and a half. I was on a podcast before that even came out, screaming, please don't let this go through. This is terrible. This has huge economic impacts. All players will just have to sell them or risk going broke. This makes it inaccessible for new people and only really accessible for exclusive bosses. You can't do this. And then they did it anyway. It lasted a year. And then they put out a post saying, we realized that this is wrong and that it did this to the market. And so we're not going to do it this way anymore. We're going to do it this way. And there's a post from them saying that. And then we come into the next game and it's the same thing. And I'm like, why? Like, you know better. I know you know better. You told me you know better. Why are we doing it again?
Well, the split team thing definitely is a compelling point. That could be the reason. But like the way that I explain it to myself, the explanation that I would like to offer is that they realize that they've been, well, maybe not specific for this Bosch issue, but for a lot of other things that feel like they're repeating mistakes that we should have learned from in Path of Exile 1, is because there was mistakes in Path of Exile 1 that got Band-Aid fixed upon Band-Aid fixed upon Band-Aid fixed, because the fix never completely resolved the issue, but like introduced new issues, and then it got very convoluted because things grew upon each other, and they just wanted to rewind everything and take it back to the basics, right? And make the basics so that the mistakes don't come up in the first place, and then they failed doing that. That's how I explain it. Like that's to me how like armor happened and all that stuff. But
fair.
I mean, at the end of the day, you have like the same with like balancing, right? There is like currently, I think, 2 builds that are vastly slightly better than the rest, right? Which is Spark Archmage and its attribute stacking. Like those 2 builds are like not even 10 times better or 100 times better. They are like God mode, right? And obviously that is an issue, but I'm always thinking like, well, it's early access. It's the first patch. More than half or more, like there's like 20% of the game out right now. There's Endgame missing. There's Ascendances missing. There is support gems missing. There is like unique items missing. There's so much things missing in the game. And so we are playing beta right now anyway. So yeah, let them be a broken build. You know, if it's like really breaking the game, you know, like Jungran's like insta teleport, kill everything, cause no cooldown thing. I think that should get fixed immediately, because that shouldn't be the case, right? But if you get like a 2-mirror Spark Mage, whatever, and you're like annihilating the end game, then it's fine. Like, who has the currency anyways besides like 100 people out of 1 million people, right? Who cares? But the thing though is, I think there is like some mandatory game issues. For example, like Mind of a Matter is like a huge problem and other things. But on the other hand, like, will they nerf it? Probably. But is the balancing aspect like important right now? I don't think so, because I assume that probably in January they're going to bring a major patch with some balancing, obviously, but they're going to introduce new classes, new support gems, new uniques, and then there's like, let's say, 200 developers versus over 1 million people that play the game trying to break the game. So yeah, we find the game breaking stuff, but there's things that they have never thought about, so they can fix it, right? So they will let us have fun. It is early access, and as far as I know, the standard play game that we are currently playing will be not really voided, but it's not going to be standard. I heard that they're going to be like, early access standard servers. So whatever currency you have right now, whatever broken build you're running right now is completely irrelevant. I think the first real standard league gets born when the first actual league of PoE2 has ended, right?
Yes.
So whatever we do right now, even if you farm 10 bazillion mirrors, it does not matter in the end. I think that the core aspect here is to try out the game, to learn the mechanics and whatnot, and give the most amount of feedback that we can get to make the game better once it gets released. Because honestly, they might fix or like nerf Archmage, but the core reason is like, hey, if you want to play this game on easy mode, then feel free to do it. There's 2 builds that will just, kill everything. But if you want to actually have a game experience and learn the boss fights, then you probably play any other build than those 2, for example, right? So that's always like thinking, like reminding yourself, like, hey, this is early access. This is alpha or beta or whatever you want to call it. And there's going to be way more broken things that are going to get introduced that we are not even aware of yet, right? But the fact is, once we get to the official release, once we get to 1.0, the first leak, Path of Exile 2 is finally out, then I want to have a balanced game with everything in line. And it's our job, basically, as streamers, as players, as players itself, to give the feedback and say, like, hey, wait a second, this is overtuned. This is something we should change. And they have it on their radar anyways. But the thing is, like, is it important right now to balance the game, or is it important to bring all the aspects of the game? Because even if they fix some things right now, they're going to introduce new stuff, and this might break the other stuff again. So what is the point of like investing so much time in trying to balance the first patch of early access, right? So
I tell you what, I'm sure that there are several builds that just none of us know about right now that like somebody somewhere is running.
100%.
That's just shitting on the stat stackers and Archmage builds and all sorts of things. There'll be builds around that we just don't know exist. That are just absolutely annihilating anything we even know about.
Not mine.
And those people will just be like, I'm just quiet my lips right there. I'm going to buy all my gear for nothing. I'm going to... Like, it's for sure that exists.
Yeah, that's the thing in PoE, right? If you have an idea like, hey, I could potentially combine this and that, like, when you think about a build, somebody else is already playing exactly what you try to do, or exactly what you kind of think of, right? So it's like inventing new builds is actually never a thing in the game, right? It's only like making things popular is the thing that like streamers do and whatnot, right? But whatever you build you currently have in your head, like PUBing it in your head, you're like, somebody else is already playing this exact same build since day 1 of the league, like doesn't really matter.
That's a perfect segue. So what have you guys been playing since the day 1 of the league? For context, maybe Neversink, what is the build of choice that you're running right now?
So I started the game with the Monk, purely on the feeling that this is the most alien class for me. So I'm usually trying to go out of the way.
Is it my audio or is it?
Is it better now?
It's
It
like
was like
the
cutting
plug
in
is
and out.
Sorry, cutting it out.
You're crackling.
It's like the plug is loose.
Let me take a look. Is it better now? No?
No.
Oh,
No,
it's really bad,
That's not
actually.
good. It's really bad.
like-
Let me give
Yeah, chat
Give
is
it
calling it
another
robot
try.
voice.
You know how old school
Okay,
audio sounds when that old school jack is just like a
Yeah,
quarter
yeah.
of the way out?
Oh,
It's that. Oh,
Okay.
we're good.
yeah, fixed.
Okay.
It's good, yeah.
We good?
Yep.
Okay, we're
Yeah.
good. Okay, that's weird. All right. I usually go out of my way to play. So I usually try to avoid absolutely OP builds. I go out of the way, especially with the new game, because I want to experience the game itself. Exactly as MB Extreme said, I didn't want to just annihilate all the bosses. But at the beginning of the game, I didn't know what to pick because everything was kind of new. And I went with the Monk because it sounded the most alien and unique to me. And I kind of ended up annihilating and obliterating most enemies purely by chance. Because the Bell is kind of GGG's love child, and I'm now playing Mercenary, like 2 characters later with partially twinked gear, and it feels like the Mercenary with all of that is still weaker than my Monk at the start of the game because the Bell itself like hits on all of the Mercenaries' abilities being available. The amount of damage you stack on the Bell is just unreal. And so there's like 300% damage per each trigger on that, and can trigger like 20 times, and then receives additional 50% more damage per any elemental ailment on that. So once I've been basically discovering that, Monk has been smooth sailing, and every step in the Monk evolution, was even better for me. Then discovered Shattering Palm with like increased range and the additional unarmed nodes. Now I could pretty much blink strike anything on the screen and then annihilate it with like 1 or 2 strikes. And that's like Mercenary has been really smooth sailing, but it's also been really, really fun. Now I've been, until recently, I've been playing minions. I've been trying out a lot of different minion variations. AI issues aside, there's a whole bunch of different issues there. Like I feel like in the end game we need a more diverse way to use other skills, and the active abilities of the minions are kind of lackluster. There's a bunch of different skills, but overall it's a very fun and dynamic gameplay. And now I'm leveling a mercenary and actually enjoying the gameplay a lot and discovering a lot more boss mechanics, because the build is actually weaker than the other one, so I need to engage and learn a lot more mechanics, but I'm actually genuinely enjoying that. So my goal is to pretty much bring every single character to level 90-ish. And then, because first of all, I'm pretty curious about the characters themselves, but then I really need to know how different characters feel, how abilities feel, how the itemization feels on every character, so that I can properly do the whole filter stuff. So I need to cover those gaps in knowledge on different pretty much play styles.
That's true. Yeah, be aware of your blind eye, basically.
That's fair.
The MB Extreme, do you want to maybe tell us what builds you've been playing?
So, I'm a campaign enjoyer, right? Like, not really, but you have to. Like, even though I played the campaign now, I think like, let's say like 7 or 8 characters. I've been through the campaign like 7 times, but one of my witches is like in Act 5, you know, so it's like 54. So I could invest like 2 more hours and I could say like, hey, I played the shit campaign like 7 times already, right? But I started off with Essence Drain Contagion Demon Lady, you know, not because I thought it was like powerful or like because we had no knowledge anyways, right?
Demon Lady being Infernalist with the demon form.
Infernalist, exactly, yeah. And I said like, that looks cool, I'm gonna play that, not knowing anything about the game, right? So and then that was like the fun part, right? And then people like, hey, do you have a planner for your build? That looks insane. That's like so much better than what I'm playing, right? And I'm like, okay, I mean, I have not seen any other builds yet. I'm just playing whatever I do. I'm not following any other streamer or YouTubers. I'm playing like 15 hours a day, you know? So I shared that. I'm feeling good about my build. Then I saw some monk builds and I'm like, what the fuck am I even doing here? You know, like, I'm like,
yeah, I'm wasting my time here.
Yeah, like, what is going on, you know? And then I quickly realized that this is not really good at all. Like, not at all, you know? And then I started to re-level and then pick the next one. And I tried a variety of builds. Like attribute stacking, obviously, but like on a very low budget without Astra Mantis and stuff, and it was fun. Then I played Spark Archmage, was actually my second character, going into attribute stacking, going into. Then I said like, hey, I want to play something that is just fast, because you know the best attribute stackers, they're going Tempest Fury, you know, with the high movement speed ability and stuff. And I hold on Tempest Fury, I get stuck here, I get stuck there, and I'm like, bro, I just want to like run around fast. How am I going to do that? So I said like, hey, Queen of the Forest is a thing, evasion stacking is a thing. I'm just gonna level up another character. I'm going Deadeye. I stacked like not even a lot, like 50 or 60,000 evasion. I had like 150% movement speed in my hideout, and that was fun. Like I was running, like I didn't even care about like, oh, I forgot a monster on somewhere in the middle of the map. The backtracking is not as bad because I have 150% movement speed, you know. And I'm there, you know, felt super good. Unless I realized, wait, if you just go evasion raiding, you're squishy as hell. Like, you're never going to get hit, but if, then you're one shot. But this doesn't include any volatiles, any corpse explosion, anything that is like a boss slams like his hammer on the floor. This is not a hit. This is an AoE. You cannot evade that, even though I'm running 95% evade. But here, one shot, one shot, one shot. I'm like, bro,
Evasion's
this
only
just sucks.
Strikes and projectiles, right?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. So if you want to go like a tanky evasion build, then you need to go acrobatic. So you lose 70% of your evasion. But playing Queen of the Forest means you're going to lose like almost all of your movement speed on top, right? So that was not the point either. And the problem, like, in terms of like tankiness, I want to have a character that can or shouldn't die in mapping because, hey, I only have one freaking portal. And I think this one portal politics basically is just killing the build diversity because you just don't want to die. So even though my data was super fun, I was playing Frenzy Charge stacking with Spiral Volley and Snipe, you know, and like 150% movement speed was so much fun to play. but dead here. Every second map, some oh, there is a piece of loot, I want to pick up, this is Exalt, oh, corpse explosion, dead. And I'm like, bro, what the hell is going on? Like, I can't, you know? If I would have 6 portals, I go in, my most favorite setup from PoE1, cast on death portal, you know? Yeah, I'll lose some experience, but I'm having fun in the game, and this is what I enjoy. Problem with this one portal is you just don't have this setup, right? And then I figured out, like, playing all kinds of sources, like, in my opinion, life is the worst part. Like a life-based build is the worst build that you can play. Energy Shield comes in second, but the most powerful thing is just stacking mana. My current character has 1 life because it's running CI. It has 0 Energy Shield because I'm running Eldritch Battery. So all I'm doing is I'm like 7,000 mana, and that solves all the issues because there is so much chaos damage in the game. So I'm running CI, which frees up a lot of like suffixes on my gear so I can get more stats and whatnot. So all I'm doing is I completely ignore the fact that life exists, that energy shield exists. All I'm getting is a big mana pool. And all of a sudden I'm almost level 96. I'm barely ever dying in any map because it's so hard to get like life sustain, like in fight. Life sustain is very hard, same as energy shield. But what is easy to get? Exactly, mana regen, which since you run Mind Over Matter and Eldritch Battery, you just have mana and you scale a bunch of mana regen. So you have like 1,500 mana per second, which is effectively 1,500 life regen per second. This is a value that you cannot get with life. So, you know, I could just stand there doing nothing and I see like 10 monsters hitting me. And I'm like, well, my mana pool is like consistent 98%. So that's fine. This is tankiness right now. This needs to be fixed as well. But that gets me back to, I want to try out different builds, but as soon as I think like, hey, wait a second, it's a life-based build, I should not do that. I should probably play a Deadeye on Energy Shield or just on mana. Like, why don't we play all the builds on mana staking? Just like my tree right now, it starts on the bottom side since it's a mercenary, right? And I travel all the way, Mind Over Matter. And now my tanky, my character is tanky. It feels great, and yeah, that's what I'm doing right now. And I'm playing Widowhail Spark on a gem link right now, and
so
that's like a lot of fun. I'm not dying.
I would argue that your problem is with defenses being bad,
Not
different. Yeah, defenses being bad and one-shot mechanics being not obvious and too hard to avoid and too frequent, rather than one portal. I think a lot of people are really upset with single portal unfairly because having 6 portals allows you to have a bunch of fail states in other areas without it feeling as punishing. But giving us 6 portals back doesn't actually fix any of those problems. It just makes you and people like you willing to ignore those problems and just get one shot randomly and just not have defenses. When the real problem is you don't have defenses unless you go either CI or MOM, which or both, which shouldn't be the case. We want life build should be an option.
I think
100% agree.
Totally on point.
The robot voice.
Believe that. Oh no.
Oh no!
What's
happening? Let me cover real quick.
Slap.
Okay.
Slap.
No, it's not.
like that slap meme.
Okay,
Slap the
let me just switch the microphone. That should be okay. How is it now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so for some reason it switched the microphone. Anyway, So I definitely agree to what Balor said. I do understand what your issue is with that MB Extreme. I totally understand this issue. I've also started on the live build, and I actually got my monk to be very, very tanky. You know, I invested like a lot of evasion, the evasion to armor conversion. I have like ghost shrouds there. I have on top of that capped resistances, capped chaos resistances, a whole bunch of different like life on every gear slot, and it felt pretty rewarding in that. And then I played my witch. Not even CI. I have some energy shield on most my gear. I have my Grim Feast. I'm sitting on 10k ES with fairly little investment. I feel like I would go way higher than that. And it just feels like, okay, one shots are suddenly not a problem. I can take damage from pretty much anything. Most things outside of me getting stuck in a ritual and my minions standing outside and watching, which happens occasionally, is suddenly surprisingly safe. And it just feels very unfair.
Yeah.
So I think the state of defenses, and we had this in PoE1. We had the state in PoE1 where we always had the situation, if one thing scales all of your problems, like defense, utility and damage, it will always become an issue. And stat stacking and mana stacking is kind of exactly out there. So the whole Archmage build archetype with just stacking mana and solves your defenses, solves your damage problems is exactly where we've been PoE1 and definitely needs some adjustments. I think the question is whether how they will nerf it and affect the economy. Will they create like an optional league? Will they try to like do a huge reset for everyone? But I'm pretty sure unless you're sniffing and inhaling copium really, really hard, if I know anything about GEG, I guarantee you that in 1 to 2 months, the whole state of mana and ES will likely be nuked from orbit. And I'm not saying most likely stats technically. I'm not even saying nerfed. I'm saying they'll get the GEG treatment of like a multi-spectrum, multi-faceted, multi-dimensional nerf from all directions. Because Grim Feast can just double overcap their ES with no problems, mana scales, damage, and defenses no problem at all at the same time. While my poor monk is like with a ton of investment, is sitting on his 2.5k life pool with a bit of extra defenses, and it's just so much worse despite having like triple the investment. So if I definitely don't expect these problems to last, long term.
That is a very good thing, and I think the first thing that I would do is not give Mind Over Matter 100% damage conversion. That is the first thing that I would do, because that would kill a lot. Because now, like Archmages wouldn't just invest into mana, because they have to worry about other things as well, which would lower their mana pool, which would lower their defenses, which would lower their damage, and so on and so forth. Like I remember, I think it was Captain Lance back in the day. In PoE1, you don't have 100% MOM. But there was one way to do it. I think there was an amulet that said like you get 8% or 10% Mind Over Matter effect per power charge. So you played a power charge stacker trying to get this 100%. And it sucked because he invested so much to get this going that his character still had no damage whatsoever, right? But the fact is, in PoE2, I click Mind Over Matter and my character is instantly a lot more tanky, and I click on CI and it's even more tanky, and I don't have to invest like your monk. I don't have to invest into evasion, into armor, into physical damage mitigation. I don't need to go max res. I don't need to do any of that. All I need is a big mana pool, a lot of regen, and I can face tank almost everything in the game. And that is a big issue, and this will get solved once they most likely gonna get Mind Over Matter to like 40%. So then you cannot run these builds with 1 life and 0 ES and completely live off your mana pool. And once they fix that, then the rest will regulate it, I guess.
I was really surprised when I first learned that Mind Over Matter is 100% conversion. I was like, what?
Yeah.
How? Why? And now that you bring it up and we're like at the point of suggesting changes, I was like, just right now, critically questioning whether CI should make you Chaos immune. I mean, it's the flavor, but like Chaos damage against Energy Shield is doubled, right? Instead of penetrating the Energy Shield. So the amount of damage that you don't take by becoming Chaos immune with CI is just so huge. Like maybe that shouldn't be such a big upside. Maybe you should just take 50% less or 75 or whatever.
I don't mind the CI Chaos immunity, but in PoE1 it's just a much higher opportunity cost, and you do need a lot more things to go CI effectively. In PoE2, you can so much easily get insane numbers of ES compared to life. So if you stack ES on all your gear, you will easily end up and get some ES nodes from the tree. You will easily end up with like 6, 7, 8 KS. No big investment at all. 5 at the very least. If you get like life on all your gear and get like 150% life on all your gear, you'll be like at 2.5k life, maybe 3k if you have some other bonuses. So it's just the pure numeric difference is there. I'm not even touching on Grim Feast that will then double those numbers. I'm not even talking about this thing. This is just hilarious. So I think the big difference is just pure numerical. I think the numbers that can't be at sports is just way too high. I'm not even sure they need to nerf this whole 100% thing. Now, I don't think CI and MOM should be compatible. I feel like this is way too cheesy. But this is a different thing. But I think if they would nerf down the ES numbers by, let's say, I don't know, 30 to 40%, they would make Grim Feast or Overcap in general way weaker. And then they would either nerf Archmage down and Mana down quite a bit, probably in a way that doesn't affect all the other classes having mana issues that are already quite severe. So I think things will go back to normal. I don't really have a solution for stat stacking because I haven't investigated that much. Or I know that the moment you go stat stacking, everything basically becomes made out of glass, and everything becomes very easy. But I think they just need to nerf down these issues. But I also wouldn't mind actually mana stacking not be. Yeah, I wouldn't mind the mana conversion not be 100%. So mana to damage conversion. I feel like it actually makes it a lot more boring. Mind over Matter was an interesting defensive layer in PoE 1, and I would argue that it's much less interesting in PoE 2. I think in PoE 2 it kinda is much more boring. I think the PoE 1 state I liked it a lot more.
I was trying to explain to stream. A lot of people being like, energy shield needs to be nerfed by like 70%. My life build in similar gear only has 2k, and I'm like, those are two separate problems. We don't have enough life right now. The solution isn't make ES as bad as life. The solution is ES is too strong and life is too weak, and we need to go like needs to go in both directions. Right now, similarly geared, similar levels of gear. Your like CI version of a monk will sit at 6k, and your like any life build in similar gear will be at like 2.2 while I'm at 6. That's a bit unreasonable. I should probably be at 5 to 4.5 to 5, and then that life build at 2.2 should probably be at like 3.5 to 4, right? Like energy shield numbers should probably be higher than life. It makes sense. They always have been, but by an amount, not like by a factor. Like it shouldn't be, oh, I have 4 times as much in it. No, you should be looking at like, oh, you get like 20% more of this, but then you don't get to recover or regen or do this and that. And those are supposed to be the things. A bigger problem is life being trash.
Yes.
It's also about the recovery, as I said. Like life has barely recovery, and honestly, there are life builds out there. They have like 8 or 9k life. It's most likely strength stackers, right? Because you get life per strength. So, but on the tree, that's like the thing. You can barely scale any max life on tree, but you can scale mana and you can scale ES, which makes those two a scalable option. But life is just, oh, I can have 150 life on every piece of my gear, but I'm gonna end up like maybe 3k life, and that's top, right? So you need a lot of like damage mitigation. You need max resistance. You need so much investment that your 3k life pool is actually enough to cover one shots, you know. And the next thing is like flask management. So if you sit on a 3k life pool, how much does your life flask regen? Like a very good life flask is like 1,000 life over 3 seconds, which is like 350 life per second. So if you have a 3k life pool, that's like 10% per second. So you press your life flask and your ball is not moving, like not at all, right? Same on ES. Like there is the note Eternal Youth. You don't have recharge, but therefore your life flask apply to ES, which makes it a lot better option, but it's still the same problem. Like the flasks are not doing a lot. But then you have mana stacking, characters with over 10,000 mana, and there is this like unique, what is it called? Melting Maelstrom. You press it, you're instantly full. Like one button press, 10,000 EHP gone. Like gotten back, you know? And there is no something comparable in a life or in an energy shield version, you know? And so you have like the numerical scaling value, which makes ES a lot better. But it turned out, because I also played a lot of ES builds, but now I'm playing only mana, all the issues are solved. Like I can have like instant life flask to get me to 100% when I need to. And it doesn't matter if I have 20,000 mana or 2,000 mana, something with life, impossible to do, right? And but this is like the kind of like balancing state, right? Where I said like, hey, don't forget, we are still in early access. It's the first ever patch. We just started to play the game. There is so much more broken stuff coming. And yeah, they're going to fix all of that. And I'm happy if they do so. And the thing is like with what I don't understand with stat stacking, the most broken item here is the Hand of Wisdom in action, you know? In PoE 1, it's a weapon. Why is it gloves in PoE 2? You know, like even if you have 100 int, it's the best in slot weapon for even non-stat stackers.
I'm playing a monk with no stat stacks, nothing. The stats that I require just to put on my gear and gems Hand of Wisdom in action, best in slot pair of gloves, gives me about 30% more DPS.
Exactly. And why is that?
I'm not stacking anything. I have, and when I say I have enough, my specific dex gems can only be leveled to 18. I actually can't even get them to 20 because I don't have enough dex for that. And my direct int gems can just be leveled to 20. If one of my pieces was designed with like 3 less int, I wouldn't be able to use level 20 gems there either. So like I'm not stacking any stats.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, where is the problem here? I think it's the amount of flat damage that you can get on the gear, and that is not a lot. So every attack-based build has the weapon, and that's it. So the Hand of Wisdom in action is giving you a shit ton of flat damage, which makes your character doing so freaking much damage. And what is an Archmage? Hey, you get flat damage from your mana stacking. So why are these builds in specific are so hilariously strong? Because both have an option to scale flat damage out of the other sources, right? And what makes intelligence stacking more insane than anything else, Hand of Wisdom in action or Archmage, both, right? Intelligence gives you a damage, but then there is also in your passive tree, so you solve the flat damage issue. But where's your percent damage coming from? In the tree, the node on the top, like pure power, 2% damage per 10 intelligence. So with just stacking intelligence, we get flat damage and we get percent damage. And then there is a node that you can anoint, depending on which character you play, that your non-critical strikes are lucky. So if I do those 3 things, my build is good. And that's basically the thing. And in terms of nerfing, like, why make the Hands of Wisdom action not a weapon again? Or
because then you could dual wield it.
All right.
Wouldn't it just make the problem worse?
I have a question that's slightly related, but also more related to just like games in general. But in my mind, Energy Shield isn't a defense. It should never have been a defense, and I don't think it should be a base type at all. And I'll give my reasoning. Energy Shield is life. Life and Energy Shield are the equivalent of like, this is the total amount of damage I'm allowed to take. It's not a mitigation. It's not a thing. I do other things to mitigate. I do take less damages. I do resistances. I do armor or evasion. I do enfeeble curses, stuff like that. All of that is like mitigation, take less damage. Energy Shield is a different version of a life pool. The fact that Energy Shield itself is a defense like armor and evasion doesn't make sense from the get-go. And anytime any game has done this, or sometimes they call it things different than Energy Shield, but it's not just PoE that does this, right? And it like counts as the defense. It scales with global defenses. It's like this competes with armor, competes with evasion, but it's a life pool. And I don't think it should ever have been a defense. I don't think in PoE 1 or PoE 2, Energy Shield is an alternate to life. It shouldn't be there. And that would mean if you were to redo the thought process like that from the ground up, it would mean I'm picking evasion or armor bases. And then you get on for instance, on a life character, you'd be like, oh, maybe I want life. Then maybe I want like flat armor and percent armor, or maybe I want like life and percent life and armor, or something like that. And then on my energy, I'll be like, oh, I'm building armor and Energy Shield. I want flat Energy Shield, percent Energy Shield, just like life.
Well, then it would just become white life, no? Like,
that's all it is
the
now.
idea is that it's supposed to be different. No, because like, yeah, it is if you go full on like that as your main pool or the significant portion of your main pool. But I can totally see how on a small scale, when you're starting on the beach and you have like 100 life and you have 10 ES on top, how is that not a defense, right? Because it reduces an incoming hit of say 20 by 50%, and then it's gone and you need to wait a while until it recovers. So it is a defense that reduces the impact of hits.
Then life is a defense. Because if I had that same piece of gear, but instead of 10 Energy Shield,
well, life is life. I mean, like the Energy Shield reduces the hits to your hits. But yeah, it is. But it works different because it recovers automatically, right? Because it comes back like online and is ready to mitigate the next hit without
that's
taking
where
from your life
your
regen.
Choice of life pool is different. I can have life, which I can maybe regen and leech to, or I can have energy shield that doesn't regen or leech but does recover on its own at a much quicker rate, but only if I don't take damage for a little while. And then those become my like effective hit pools. But neither of them are defenses.
I see your point. Let's say it like that. I see your point, but I understand why they set it out from the beginning to be like that trinity of energy, shield, armor, and evasion, because it also aligns with the trinity of attributes, right? And I just see what they were trying to do here and how to consciously make energy shield different from life. But I'm sure Neversink has something better to say than my sticking to ideology and symbolism and all that.
No, I think the symbolism is actually very appropriate here. They did kind of go, well, PoE is essentially a problem-solving game in a sense. So you kind of have the problem, how do I not get destroyed in endgame maps by all kinds of damage? What kind of solutions do you have? So if you're going for a life pool, the obvious solution should be the first thing, okay, resistances, kind of the first layer. The second layer is likely armor and evasion. And probably the thing you're talking about right now, I think this is the core point here, is that there's a very strong inequality of the quality of defenses and what they provide for you. We've actually seen this video by Creparian that he called the armor problem. I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, where he basically says that armor is just vastly worse than the other defenses because of the way it scales and for other reasons. I think this is essentially the problem, because life has lower numbers, not just because you have a life flask, which is pretty bad right now. Admittedly, it needs to be buffed. I totally agree. But life also should ideally come with secondary defenses. Armor or evasion that provides you with a good amount of extra defenses, potentially other things like block and so forth. Energy shield, canonically in PoE1, doesn't have this luxury. So if you go for PoE1 ES, it doesn't really come with a whole bunch of evasion or armor unless you sacrifice it or you're a trickster, but this is kind of a different topic. So the problem there, I think, is that just the inequality of defenses is high, and especially in a one portal gameplay, evasion, for instance, with life is not quite as a great idea, because essentially if you die, the whole map is pretty much gone. On energy shield avoids this issue. So I think the issue that you essentially have here is how can so yes, mana energy shield is strong, but how can life and how can other defenses catch up to avoid this ultimate fail state? And this is, I think, the situation that we have here. Armor has some solutions. So you have like block, you have the fire damage conversion thing that where you block it with armor, but it ultimately is not enough unless you have like insane life numbers. Same for evasion. Evasion can go for like Gale Force, they can try use some ghost shots and so forth, but in the end, it's just not enough to avoid these things consistently compared to energy shield and mana. And I'm not giving any great solution there. I think just numerically, there's a lot of things that could be adjusted, and probably putting a lot of suffixes and interesting mods there could help a lot. But yeah, I think ultimately the problem is that the defenses, as they are called, when it comes to non-energy shield, are just weaker. Yeah, but I see your point. Yeah, energy shield is a life type. I do understand that there's a bit of a different concept, but I think ultimately this is not an issue. It's just a kind of like an inconsistency that I can understand.
That little rant of mine isn't really about like the state of PoE2 right now. I've had this has been like a thing that's boiled in the back of my brain for years, and like it just doesn't make sense to me that it counts as a defense like everything else when it acts like a life.
It's always depends. Like, first of all, I don't like to say it, but I actually, thinking about it, I really agree with you, Balor, here with this entire energy shield thing. But in comparison of, since we're like going back in time in PoE2, basically, right? So we're just like on a earlier state of PoE1. But think about what happened with the defensive layering of PoE1. Since I'm playing the game since 2017, so I've seen quite a bit of like development, right? And there was a time where energy shield builds were simply the best, right? But in the end of PoE1, like what we have right now, what is the best way to mitigate physical damage? It is not stacking 1 million armor or 10 million armor. It is simply going 100% physical damage taking as element, which solves all your armor problems ever. And it's way stronger because the way resistance works is just like 90% reduced, not like armor, the bigger the hit, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into the detail, right? but I remember, was it like 320, 322, somewhere in like last 2 years, I played actually an Instacker, ES, yeah, and I had 20,000 ES. I had 20,000 ES, but no other defenses, but maximum resistance, CI, Chaos Immune, but no armor, no nothing, no conversion. And I felt so freaking squishy, even though I had this massive life, like ES pool, but I still died nonstop. And I was like, how? So I did the different. I just get to 90% maximum resistance. Then I go like, Transcendence and all kinds of conversions. And all of a sudden, I need an ES pool of like 1,500 because I reduced the incoming damage by 99%. And I also like had this issue, for example, since I'm an EK Ignite lover, right? And this has like Determination, Grace, some Energy Shield, like a whole bunch of defensive layers stacked on top of each other, which makes the build not a tank, but fairly tanky. It is decent, okay? So now the change comes with Determination, Grace giving you lower base values and stuff like that. So on a witch perspective, starting on the top of the tree, I have no access to evasion. I have no access to spell suppression. I have no access to armor. I have no access to anything like that. All I have is Energy Shield. And the current state of Energy Shield in PoE1 is so bad that I'm like, okay, so if I decide to play a witch, then I'm by default squishy. And this is like, but in PoE2, we're currently in the state where Energy Shield or mana stacking is your tankiest version. So they're going to probably fix that. But at some point, it's so hard to balance it out. Like one of these defensive layers will be stronger than others, and every build that uses that defensive layer will be meta. While the others are struggling so hard, trying to do everything and stacking layers of block, and I raise my shield to block that damage, it doesn't one-shot me, and I'm like, on my other build, like, one button press, that. Oh, I hit a volatile, like, it doesn't deal any damage, I don't care about that. While the other guy is, like, sweating and, like, shield raise and then turn around and run away, and, like, there's, like, no point.
Like, oh, I got hit for 4,000. There's 1/5 of my overflowed life. Anyway.
Yeah. And this is definitely a problem, and we haven't even talked about Ward yet. But I hope Ward is never going to be a thing in PoE2.
It already is.
I was just
Ward in PoE1 is also a defensive layer, right?
What's in PoE2?
It is?
Yeah, it's just called guard. It's the same thing.
Guard is like guard skill stuff.
No. There's a stack called guard.
Yeah, I know. But
wait, there is this flask that gives you guard when you overflow life.
Guard is ward.
Yeah, there's charms that give you guard. Guard is like ward?
Yeah,
I thought it was like guard skill, steel skin sort of like,
No.
but it doesn't time out.
Shield.
It doesn't time out?
Well, I mean, it times out when the charm, if you use it on the charm, then it times out when the charm runs out because it's part of the charm.
Right.
There's a flask that gives it to you and it lasts as long as the flask does and acts like ward.
Okay. And is there something that doesn't have a duration that doesn't end? That doesn't end well.
Grim Feast.
Apparently great
the
English.
charm doesn't run out. It just adds and then stays, apparently. Yeah, overflow doesn't run out, but that's a different thing, and it definitely should.
Yeah, I've been implementing the Grim Feast tech on my mercenary that I first played, and then now I'm leveling a witch because I also want to try the Infernalist demon form stuff and see whether we can maybe find like some OP stuff to do there. But I realized on my second playthrough, now I'm using Ember Fusilade. You guys know that, where you stack up balls that fly around you, and then after a short duration, they fly off to the last enemy you targeted. And I like it because it's sort of like Blade Vortex and Winter Orb in the sense that you can wind it up before you get into combat situation, right? And like then while walking, you deal the damage automatically without you having to do it. But it is a little bit more micromanagement and a little bit more work. And I wanted to try other things, but this is leading me into my point, right? What I realized when doing the second build, while doing the first build, I was super on copium, right? I was doing mercenary, fragmentation rounds, and explosive grenades, just doing the sort of Navy SEAL or whatever dream, like of running in and shooting everything and exploding with grenades. And it's actually a good combo, but it's ultimately, I think, a little bit weak compared to the investment that I had to put into it. And when I see what other people can do with the same investment. But I stuck with it for a long time, and I told myself, well, Catmaster, You're just going to try and make this good. And I was glorifying that while I was on the first character, but now on the second character, I realized that I'm greatly disincentivized from trying other skills, because at first, they sold us this entire new gem system, or we were sold this gem system as being free of having to upgrade the links on your gear when you get a new piece of gear, but they just shifted the burden from changing your gear to changing your skill now, because the 6th link is now on the main skill. And now if I want to try any other skill, I have to get a new perfect jeweler orb, and the smaller ones, by the way, as well, in order to get that to 6th link, to try it and then decide it's shit and then move on to the next one. So how have you guys been dealing with that?
That's an expectation issue, and it took me at least a week to get over it. At least in my opinion, it's an expectation issue. So coming from PoE 1, my expectation is that to try any gem or any alt or make a new character, I'm going to have a level 20 gem on a 6th link. That isn't the case here, and it doesn't need to be. But it's weird to not have that expectation. My alts should work and function and give me a great idea whether I like it or not, whether I want to min-max or not, on a level 19 gem and a 5 link. And they do. They all do. And that's still difficult for me to do now, is to like rework my expectation into, I don't actually need to have a 6 link. I don't actually need to have a level 20 gem. But it feels really weird coming from PoE 1. I suspect people playing PoE 2 for the first time who haven't done PoE 1 might not have that same mental block that we've got, and it's still a little hard for me to adjust now. But the expectation of a 6 link to me is part of the beginning of the min-max process of, I really enjoy this, I'm going to min-max it, I'm going to add that 6 link, I'm going to get myself a level 20 gem instead of a level 19, I'm going to start doing my min-maxing of that thing. That's
Totally
it's
agreed.
expectation.
Totally agreed. I think you're absolutely on point. I think the way it's designed is the 6th link isn't even always super beneficial. In many cases, you kind of end up using some conditional or mana intensive things, or things you don't really need. And oftentimes the build damage often comes from combination of skills anyway. So it's not that losing out on the level and losing out on the link is usually making a build untestable at the very least, or unenjoyable. So usually I add the perfect jeweler orb when I'm really set on a specific build. I'm sitting at level 91, 92. I feel like adding a little bit of extra oomph before the next breachlet fight or something like that. And then at this point I'll do that. But I also agree. I think there's a lot of cases, for instance, the ascendancy is a similar situation. People are just so used to being able to just go into Zaro, lightly bitch slap him, and then get the first ascendancy, so that actually putting any more work into your ascendancy, despite the power it gives, feels very weird to them. And I still think there's a bunch of ascendancy issues there, but
I still think it's overtuned and whatnot, but
yeah, absolutely, it is. But then again, I
with that as well.
Completely new players today that have been super struggling with the game. They've never played PoE 1, and they've all managed to do their sense actually fairly easily. They lost their first trial. On the second try, 2 of them got it done. The third try, the third one got done. And they've been like running around with ineffective links, slapping brutality in the elemental attack. So it's not like that they're very experienced players. So I agree. I think it's fine. I don't think it's a major issue there.
Also, you're right about that 6 link really not being important, because if I think about it, what happened when I added a 6 link to my main attack on this monk?
Mana.
Is I actually took my best support from my supporting skill and just moved it. And then I was like, oh, but now I've got an empty socket over here. And then like the one I put in there ended up being MAME. And so it's just like, okay, well, I did add a 6 link. It was worth it and I don't regret it. But really all I got out of that was MAME, really. Because like, it made my main attack a little stronger, but then it made my sub attack that I'm using all the time anyway a little weaker. So I probably got a little more power overall, but nowhere near as much as a full gem, because I was using that gem and I stole it. So I got like half a gem worth of damage at best, and then the ability to MAME something. Like I got to add a utility thing. Like it really wasn't important.
That's completely fair, and like, yeah, maybe you don't need a 6 link. I totally agree to test out a skill, but like even a 5 link is for someone who doesn't trade for the orb. I have like a handful of those greater ones, right? Like, maybe I haven't played as much as you do. Certainly, I haven't. But don't you think that the point of there isn't even a good support gem option for most skills for the 6th link is somewhat due to the fact that we have a very tiny fraction of the game right now? Because I expect in the full release, I expect the full release to be like, hey, there's always going to be huge options for an additional support gem.
I have not had that problem, and I hope they don't introduce that problem. And none of my builds have I felt like every link can be a damage link. And I'm so happy that it isn't. It's usually I have maybe 2 or maybe 3 really good, like, bring me damage links to put in my build. And then I've got like a bunch of different either change behaviors or do utility things to put in my skills. And I fucking love it. I don't
agree.
want
So
there
good.
to be, here's 6 supports that all say more damage, because then I've lost the ability to be creative. I've lost the ability to have a different build from the guy next to me who also decided to start the same thing, even if we're not looking at the same guide or anything like that. As soon as there's 6 in a row that just say damage, 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 that becomes the option. And that's what it is in PoE1. And I never want that to happen over here. I'm loving the ability to go, you know what? I can change this one from shock to electrocute because I'm already able to shock with this other thing. And now I've got electrocute. And then this ability, well, I've got a 25% damage gem, but I could put it here on my bell for only when I drop it. And that's where I'd get the most amount of damage. If I put it on my bell, I'll get the most amount of damage. If I put it on my main attack, I'll get the second most amount of damage, but the most all the time. But it'll cost more mana, and I am having mana problems. So maybe I put it on my support, where it's technically the least amount of damage, but consistent all the time, but doesn't cause me mana issues. And so maybe I'll put it there. And like, there's a discussion and a change that can happen. And my build can be different to your build, even though we're using the exact same set of supports and the exact same set of skills. We could have them all swapped around in all different areas, and it will make your and my build play significantly different and have significant upsides and downsides that are different from each other, even while using the same build and the same abilities. That's fantastic.
I'd just quickly like to add up on that. I completely agree, 100%. I think the fact that the support gem system doesn't just give you easy solutions, like here have like 50% more crit, here have like 20% more damage all the time, is very, very good. And on top of that, you really feel that if you try playing a minion rich. So it gives you so many absolutely... There's some problems there, but there's also a lot of awesome wins. Like you can think about, okay, now I have my storm mages and I can dedicate a bunch of them to focus on generating high quality shocks on enemies and never making the shocks expire if the enemy is ignited. But then I have my burning doggo or ascendancy thing that will keep enemies ignited, and the other minions will not do any shocks, but then they will be dealing more damage with elemental overload. And then you have like these interesting combinations where you're coming up with creative solutions that all make you feel very clever about it, even if it's exactly what the developers intended. And I feel like this is one of the big strengths of the game, that the strongest skill gems, the strongest support gems, you actually need to think about, okay, where do I want my martial tempo? Which ability should be faster? What ability should receive my just additional elemental damage with attacks? And there's like this very interesting decision process there. And I really would hate it if you would end up in the PoE1 mode again of, okay, if this support gem doesn't give me 35% more damage at the very least, I'm not going to take it into my build and goodbye, sir.
Because if you take that minion build to PoE1 and just like inserted it, you'd be like, all right, well, these are the 4 minions that I have out. They are all attacks, so they all get martial tempo. They all do elemental damage, so they all get primal armaments. They're all minions and they scale with minions. Great. So they all get minion mastery. And then they all, and then, okay, so this one needs to tank. So it gets meat shield. these other 3 don't need to tank, so they all get Feeding Frenzy. And then that's it. That's the build. You're done. Move on. That's so boring. This is way better.
I do get that. But here I'm still the guy, even though like I remember the first time I saw this PoE2 trailer where he played this like mercenary grenade dude where he fought this boss and using like 20 different abilities, right? Oh, here, I need to use that.
Yeah.
Sorry. My bad.
You got muted.
I accidentally pressed your mute button, MB. And
You're
you unmuted yourself
muted,
and
by the
muted it again. Yeah, you're still muted. Please start that sentence again. It was my bad. I wanted to mute myself and I accidentally
No,
hit yours.
it's in the program. There we go.
I unmuted you now. Oh, you also pulled the plug?
It's like my separate mouse, so I was like, how am I going to unmute myself? I don't have a mouse on this PC. But anyways.
Oh, okay, my bad. Sorry.
But yeah, here I am still sitting, still gonna try to find this one build that only uses one button. And I don't care if I have 30% less damage than others. I need to press one button, and that's it, right? And so the question that I don't really have to, where I'm going to put my, like, because I have 5 abilities or 6, and I need to have an entire rotation like an MMO, right? I don't care about that. So I'm still gonna be like, I just wait for PoE to come out. To the PoE tells me like, hey, what is my best support gems? Because sometimes I'm sitting here like, what support gem am I taking? Because yeah, there's not all out yet, so it's kind of like a bit of a different thing here, right? But
that is fine.
Yeah, but going back to the original thing that we started to talk about, which is like testing and trying out different things. I feel like now in PoE2, people are even less incentivized to actually try out something new. And this is because of the hilarious campaign. Because honestly, I'm a campaign enjoyer. Like, I don't care. I leveled like 7 characters already, right? But it's still, even with, if I spend like, let's say I level up a Deadeye and it's a bow character, right? And even if I spend 5 exalts for a new bow every 3-4 levels, I have a good experience leveling, and it takes me like 10 hours to finish the campaign. Other people don't have that, and they probably need 20 hours to do that. So they are like, I would really like to try out this attribute stacker or spark mage or Deadeye or whatever, you know, but am I willing to do like 20 hours campaign? Because it's the same in PoE1. Like, I guarantee you most people are playing 1 or 2 different builds. They play one league starter, and then after like 2 or 3 weeks, they go over to their endgame build for the league, and that's it, because they cannot see themselves doing the campaign. And in PoE1, it was about, let's say, 5 to 8 hours, depending on which skill, which leveling gear you had, but it was fairly fast, you know? And you could make it fast with a tabby and sixling and quality on gems and blah, 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 blah. So PoE2, on the other hand, you don't have that. Yes,
just
you can have...
quickly, because that's important. The new-ish, not newish, but like the average like casual people, as far as I could tell, 10 to 12 hours in PoE1 campaign. Like experienced returning casual people are 10 to 12 hours. When we're doing it, we're 4 to 6 because we're degenerates. They're 10 to 12 still. Those people are only still taking like 20 to 25 on PoE2. So it is still bad. I'm just saying, like, it's not nearly as extended as it feels to us.
Okay, then let's do it this way. A newer player needs to like at least 25 hours to finish the campaign. So the question is not really like, because for me, I'm a degenerate, right? I play 12 hours a day. For me, leveling up a new character is like 1 day of investment, time investment. So I level today and I gear tomorrow, and this is 2 days of streaming for me. So when somebody has like 2 or 3 hours time per day to play, they are like, if I wanted to play a new character, I need to invest 2 weeks in the campaign again, because I don't have vacation now, to actually try something. And this is like, even in PoE1, people were permanently complaining because the campaign takes 10 hours, you know, and I don't want to invest 10 hours to try something because I don't even know if I'm going to like it. PoE2, on the other hand, and yes, I think the campaign is kind of like great. If you play it for the first time, it was amazing. But I also want to play out other builds, and do I really want to do that again? And 25 hours is like 2 weeks investment. I'm surely not going to do that. So in PoE2, you either pick one character, it either is good or not, or you're most likely not going to play another character. And that is a big issue where we go far away from this, because the entire PoE universe, in that case, with these amazing skill tree and skills and different weapon swaps and ascendancies and all that kind of things, should actually incentivize you to say like, hey, I want to try this, I want to try that, I want to do this, and I want to do that, and I'll try to invest into this and compare all these builds. But realistically, you're never going to do that, because even for me, being like, I need to play up a new character, I've done it 7 times already, but I need to do it again. I don't want to, but I have the time to play. Like, no way that somebody else is going to level up like 3 different characters. And on top of that, we currently don't have the option. Hey, I'm playing a mercenary and I'm picked Witch Hunter, but I would really like to try out Gemling. No, I cannot just reset my points, go lap again, and respec the ascendancy. It's not a thing. So you need to level again. Are you going to do that? No, you're not going to do that. So that is very
I think it's
problematic.
important to point out that while that probably holds true for a large portion of those players, I would also like to show up like that there is also the kind of players that don't have this completionist approach, that is this expectations of this expectation of I need to have played the build in endgame and done endgame bosses or something like that to feel like I fully experienced that build. I know personally people who play Path of Exile 2, like, hey, I played this character to Act 2, middle of Act 2, and now I'm re-rolling. I made a sorceress before, and now I want to try out the ranger. And then they play the ranger until end of Act 1, and they felt like they've played the ranger, and then they move on to play the warrior or something like that, right? Like, I'm just saying, like, not everyone wants to do everything all the way through.
It is. There's
That's also the
definitely
point. Sorry, you go.
I've got someone in the stream who's on their 7th character, and it's the first time they've gotten to Act 6, and they're loving it, loving every second of it. They've played 7 characters now. They're now in Act 6 for the first time. So that definitely happens.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, players are different. Like, everybody finds its own like fun in the game, right? For me, it's mapping. For Neversink, it's bossing. For the other guys, like getting every character to 90 or finishing the campaign with every character. But whatever. In the end of the day, I feel like at the moment, being a content creator, doing builds and stuff, the first thing that I always get is not like how much did you invest, which is usually the question, or what do I need to make this build? It's always like, hey, can I play this build on a Deadeye? Can I play this build on a Gemling? Can I play this build on a Witch Hunter? This is the first question I get, because nobody really wants to play up the class that I'm playing on my build, because they're like, I see, I don't want to do this, like, it is like this against this mentality that you actually want to try out everything, in my opinion.
I do believe that this is the case, and I think you are all kind of right on that. I don't think it's the same for most players. I think some don't mind leveling a different character, and the campaign is just a lot better than PoE1. But I'm also going to put on my tinfoil hat at this point, and I would say that this is perfectly and exactly intentional to be this the way. I think GEG also knows that, and I think this is actually a big point for them, but they don't want to change, because this makes people come back to the game the next league. So what basically ends up happening, you play a character, you get it to wherever you get it. Maybe it's like T6 maps, maybe it's the end game, maybe you just reached, let's say, X3, and then you stop playing, maybe, or maybe you do it like with 2 characters or 3 characters. Then you stop playing. You have this idea, oh boy, well, I still want to play this character, but at this point, something else is important. Life, another game, I don't know. You just got lost interest. But then some time passes, 3, 4, 6 months, whatever. And then they come out and tell, hey, here's a new exciting league. And then now we're going to the moon, and you have like 7 new skill gems. You can summon aliens. And I don't know. And at this point, people see that, and they return to the game, potentially get another supporter pack, try the new character, rinse, repeat. I think this is how they get a lot of players. I think this is how they get me. I don't usually play more than 1, sometimes 2 characters in PoE1. I usually play them as far as possible, experience pretty much everything. I don't enjoy leveling. And then I come back in the next, like, 3 months later, 4 months later, whatever it is in the current development season. And I think that's the same thing they're going for in PoE2. The campaign should be as good as possible. You should be having fun playing that. But I think GG is perfectly okay with you only playing, let's say, 1 to 2 builds per league.
But this, with the amount of options that we have, is kind of ridiculous.
Yes. Well, you're still trying out a lot of options for the character, right? So on the Monk, I played with a whole bunch of different abilities, a whole bunch of different setups, melee, ranged, trigger setups, with palm setups, one-handed setups, with swap weapons and different. On the Witch, I tried out with a whole bunch of different minion setups and Infernalists. I'm still planning for more setups. It's not like the amount of builds available on one character, one instance is low. They usually have like a huge plethora of builds available. Now you can't swap from the Witch and then start using a crossbow. Well, you can, probably won't be very effective, but I think this is kind of where they kind of pull the line and tell you want to explore more. Well, either put the time in or come back later. That's kind of, I believe, this is the way PoE is designed to do. I think this is also, by the way, why they might decided to not make the ascendants changeable. I think it's the same incentive there. Kind of say, okay, well, you will either go for this one playstyle or this one playstyle. You have enough choices. You can't change it easily. But this may be me interpreting thing. Maybe it's a technical limitation.
I know a bunch of people that are currently sitting on an ascendancy that they don't want to play anymore, but they're already like level 95. So, and they're like, I don't see myself leveling up a character, doing this entire campaign again, leveling up my character just to try out if I like Deadeye more than Witch Hunter. This is like the problem that I see there, right? And just because like making it like we have no meta right now. I mean, we do have, but let's say when early access came out, nobody knew anything. Nobody knew that attribute stacker is going to be this crazy. Nobody knew that Archmage is going to be this. Like, nobody knows. Maybe there's minions that just one-shot the boss because there's like some code error or anything. Nobody knows it. So you're picking your character like I did. Like, hey, Essence Drain Contagion sounds fun. Demon Lady looks freaking cool. I want to like fly around with this thing, right? So it's completely RNG, a coin flip. If I pick a class that is actually good in the meta, because what ended up happening is I'm playing my character, I'm having fun, and then I see other people doing their stuff with the monks, with the bell, and kill this boss in like 5 seconds, where I like played Elden Ring, like dodging every ability because I'm one-shot if not, but I have so low damage that the fight takes 5 minutes. And this is what I felt like going the first time through the campaign. I felt like playing Elden Ring, I swear. And then I see some other people playing like a much better build than I do, and then I'm like, hey, I want to play this too. This looks way more fun. So it was just bad RNG that I just end up picking the class that looked fun, but in the end of the day is trash. But then I cannot.
No, the problem is that I think, I agree, but at this point the problem is that the builds are not very balanced. I think this is the real problem there. So I think then the one build maybe should be a little bit weaker, and your build should be a little bit stronger, so that you don't feel like this whole gap is so huge. I don't feel like it's good that the warriors right now are basically feeling like they're playing Dark Souls 1, while we have like PoE1 mode rangers out there, PoE1 mode spark mages. So I think this is kind of the point where we're at. I think this is just the early access issues, and I definitely agree it should be better. It's just,
is it even true though? Here's the thing. I don't even feel like we know if that's true. And I'll explain why. Using MB Extreme's example, he was like, oh, I'm playing ED Contagion on a demon mummy because it looks cool. And then was like, oh, wait. Now that I've seen what everyone else is doing, it's actually really bad. I'm not keeping up. These other things are doing way better. But I don't know if you've seen the ED Contagion demon mummy builds that have come out in the last day or two.
Yeah, of
on
course.
YouTube.
But
because it's absolutely disgusting. So I'm not saying like, oh, you're wrong, you should know. No one knew, right? Like, obviously, like that evolves. But what I'm saying is, do we even really know at this point that warriors can't be good? Like, I don't think we do. I think the meta is hugely shaped by us and what we show people. There's going to be so much stuff. There's going to be so much stuff. And not only is there going to be so much stuff, if it wasn't over Christmas break, there'd already have been 2 or 3 other balance patches by now. Like, by the time January 10th-ish rolls around, and everybody will be back in the office by around the 6th. And by the 10th, there'll already be balance changes and stuff happening and whatnot. Like, the things that are trash right now might be super fantastic the next morning you wake up. And the things that are going really, really well right now might be dumpster fires when you wake up tomorrow. like I just, like, is there some imbalance? Sure, there's definitely some imbalance, and there's definitely like things that need to be better and things that need to be worse. But like, I swear, if we weren't over Christmas break, there would already have been 3 more entire sweeping balance changes that have already happened. But
Yeah.
because GGG is a good company to work for who cares about the people who work there, they let people have Christmas holidays with their family. So we get Skeleton Crew for a bit. And when everyone's back in early January, shit's gonna change.
Just to add, just to add there, I'm kind of curious. How do you believe their approach there? Because I feel like at this point they will have to basically nuke a bunch of builds from orbit and maybe even change something like Clarity completely. So do you believe they'll start new like economy leagues? Will there be like wipes? I don't personally think they'll do it like that. So I'm very curious what your thoughts are on how exactly they're going to change the game when they'll be doing that.
I can tell you what I hope. I don't know if I can tell you what I think they'll do because I don't even deign to guess. But I can tell you what I hope. I hope that during like early January, as soon as they get here, they just do the nerfs and buffs that they want. If they look at and they go, nope, that Archmage thing's gross. Nope, this Monk thing is gross. Nope, this Chain Herald device is gross. Nope, this thing's gross. That thing's gross. All this stuff is too strong, too powerful, and too quick. Looks like PoE1. We don't want any of it. I hope they just do it. But at the same time, I hope that there's a list twice as long of skills, abilities, or archetypes that they thought were underperforming that they buff at the same time. And don't even worry about the economy reset. We're in the middle of essentially a beta. It doesn't matter. Just do the things and see how they play out. But then, hopefully, I'm hoping towards the end of January that there's time for new classes and whatnot. And whenever it's time to add a few classes in, that's when I'd like to see an economy reset. That's when I'd like to see, hey, all these changes we've made, we've been trying to make stuff better. We've changed rarity. We've changed how this scales. We've changed how that scales. We've changed these things that were overtuned. We've buffed these things that were undertuned. And we've got some new classes, new weapon types, new everything. That's when I want to see the economy reset happen.
Do you want to have like a strict wipe, or would you like to be like a soft wipe, as in migrating everything that we have now into a new permanent?
So they already said how that was going to work, sort of.
Oh, they did? Okay.
Because there's basically going to be a standard league that is only standard for early access, right? Now, they didn't say they were going to do any economy wipes. They just said anyone who's playing in early access, your character will go to its own separate standard league that isn't standard.
Okay.
That's just this. Basically, you'll never be able to make a character there again. Enough of stuff will never leave there, but it's like a secondary standard league, which will be like the Hall of Fame of all of your early access stuff. They did not mention anything about doing wipes during early access, but in my opinion, it is completely unviable to do 12 months or more without an economy reset.
Yes.
That is unplayable. So I'm hoping that whenever they do those wipes to be treated like a new league would, that pseudo standard league that becomes a graveyard pops into existence. All my beta characters head over there, and I have a new league to join, even though it's not a league. But like, it would act just like
maybe
that.
Maybe it
That's
is a
what I
league.
want.
Maybe because there's new endgame mechanics that they're porting from PoE1, right? Maybe. Maybe
I mean,
it's light league.
It's not going to be a league because they don't want to have specifically developed brand new content. They're going to be adding, we wanted
but
to
it wouldn't
bring
be
in
brand
Blight
new
this
content,
time,
right?
and we wanted to bring in, but it won't be called a league. It won't be a league. It's not going to have league supporter packs because that would be very
No, not all that
grabby,
stuff.
right? Like,
but
it's not gonna
treated
be a
for the
league.
sake of a league in game.
But if you're wiping, you're not wiping the server. But if you're like wanting to start a new one where there's an economy reset, you have to make
I
that.
can actually imagine them doing
right?
a real league, maybe not supporter packs, but I can see them actually bringing like a league like that, so where you are playing a certain mechanic and it's there in every single zone. I can totally imagine them doing that.
I can't this early.
Oh, okay. Well, one thing I do want to maybe
kill some hopes at this point. I do think there will be at least one large balance patch in January, but I don't see them bringing any major content patch before probably end of March. Simply because I see them most likely the way that I see it going on. So January they will probably sit down, decide on what needs to be done, work on all of the existing issues, do work on some large balance changes. I'm pretty sure they're still not quite done with the new content to be released. But at the same time, they have a release coming up of PoE1 at the end of February. I don't think they want these things to overlap. So I do expect them to bring out some smaller patches, but I think the large first content patch will probably be by the end of March, unless they can manage to do it by the end of February. And I by the end of January, I don't think they'll manage to get the timing right there. Maybe they'll just say, okay, doesn't matter, we'll go for 2 parallel modes. Yeah, but I expect them to probably come up with something for PoE1. It most likely will be, by the way, some systems from PoE2 making to PoE1. I can totally believe they'll be doing something like that to get some people's attention there. But yeah, I don't think we'll see a lot of huge content patches in January.
Let me see real quick.
Might be wrong there. Maybe I'm really
okay.
hoping I'm wrong.
Maybe I'm on copium. I'm just gonna try once to spread my copium to you.
Okay.
All right, and we'll see if it works. Maybe
Okay.
I'm half on the copium. All right. I agree that if there's brand new content like new classes, or they're gonna add one of the new mechanics in the end game, put a tree in, shit like that, I agree that would have to happen by the end of January. Otherwise, there would be too much of an overlap. I half expect it to happen by the end of January for 2 reasons. One, we already know that they were originally planning 2 more classes for release than what we have. And that those ones were like 90% done. And it was so close to having them in that it was like a pretty last minute decision not to. They're so we've got at least 2 classes that are practically finished. Right? And those 2 classes also, when they say classes, will come with the weapon types associated with them and the skills associated with those. So those entire branches of things from those 2 classes were already almost finished, to the point where they were nearly in the game and just pulled at the last second. So we're already looking at, that's a huge extra amount of things. 2, I don't know how many people saw the picture I tweeted before the league start. I'm pretty sure you were one of the people who replied, of the giant list of base classes and ascendancies that existed, with only the ones that we have filled in. And it's a striking image to look at. We know we've only got 1/3 of the classes, but when you look at that image and you go, wow, there's so much missing.
Yes.
They already told us their goal, which I don't believe they'll meet because they're GGG, but the goal was minimum 6 months, maximum 12 months. But they never said maximum, right? They said, well, we'll go over if we need to, but the goal is between 6 and 12 months. That is 2.5 classes a month. To even have a shot, to even have a shot of pulling that off, even remotely close, even giving them a 6-month extension on that thing, they need to be releasing 2 classes in January. And there's already 2 that were nearly done. So I don't know, maybe I'm on some copium here, but I feel like late January, there could be new classes, new ability, new things. That's my copium. That's my only attempt. That's why I think it is a possibility.
I hope you're right. I'm not convinced. So I do believe that Druid and Hunters are probably rather done, but I think they will probably first try to address the existing issues. But I do hope you're right. I really want to play some bear form. I think it's definitely something that is. We have a very huge lack of bears in the economy right now. I think this needs to be fixed as soon as possible.
Yeah, I thought you were on some copium, but no, you make a really good point with the stepping towards. And like the thing is, when they say 6 months minimum, I didn't really believe there's any shot that they
there's
release
no
it in
shot.
summer, right? Like the earliest would be in fall, and then why would they release it in fall when they could be setting it up for a bigger release near Christmas, right? When they could get more content to a more polished state and do a full release.
There's a 0% chance it's 6 months in zero.
Yeah,
There's no way.
I honestly wonder like how firm and how fixed they are on their like deadline or goalpost list for the full release right now. Whether there's
not at all.
there's gonna be compromising, and they're gonna be like, if it's not done for early access for full release, then it's not a full release feature, but it comes out with the first expansion or something like that. Right?
I think they're sitting golden. So I think their current situation is just incredibly good. They have sold a big amount of early access copies and high supporter packs. The PoE1 is coming up and people are still excited for that. And I think if they design the league intelligently, there's also high chance that they'll be able to grab some of the new PoE2 players and bring them to PoE1. And I think they just need to take their time and get things as well polished as possible. And knowing GG, I think that's exactly what they're going to do. So I think have around 0% chance that they'll finish PoE2 release in 1 year. So I'm personally expecting like a 1.5 years timeline. They'll probably time it around different events and holidays and whatever Diablo 4 is doing. So, and then at this point, they'll probably bring it out. So I would go with like 1.5 years is probably realistic.
Yeah, that's also what I think. But even with that, I still believe in a January new classes. I believe I'm gonna fucking stay on that copium until February 1, and then I'll cry.
I'm gonna
I'll be a believer.
So
if it happens.
I know this is a very passive, or at least like passive aggressive take, but I have been disappointed by GGG every single year more than the year previously. And that is mainly because being a Path of Exile content creator and living off whatever GGG releases. We've gone from 4 leaks per year with 3-month cycles to 3 leaks per year with a 4-month cycle. In 2024, we had 2 leaks. And thinking about Settlers League started in like August or something. And we may be going to see a league, maybe, in like February or March. So makes it a 7, 8, 9 months league. Never happened before. But of course, PoE2. So the big problem here is every time when GGG says something like, hey, it's 6 months, it could be 6 years. Because, hey, when did Path of Exile 2 actually got like announced? In 2019. Obviously, there was Corona, there was all kinds of shit happening, and there's a delay, there is a delay, here's a delay, right? And in the end, it took them like more than 5 years to bring early access, which we know is probably 30% of the game, what it should be, right? In its full release. Maybe 30%, maybe even less than that. So the next point is PoE1 is a very dedicated player base, and we want to play PoE1. We also want to play PoE2. But what they are doing is instead of saying like, hey, boys and girls and everything in between, we need more time for PoE2. We said this like 20 times already. This is the 21st time, and we're probably going to say it 30 times. We need more time. It's fine. Then give us PoE1 leaks. But what they do is delay PoE1 leaks for the sake of PoE2, then delay PoE2 without giving us a PoE1 leak, then release PoE2 a month later in early access as planned, and saying that there is not going to be a PoE1 leak. Which means every time you think like, hey, okay, in 2 months we're going to play this, and then a month later we're going to play that. Because at the end of the day, they kind of said like that they want to have like 3-month cycles of leaks in both PoE1 and PoE2. So now then Jonathan said like, hey, in 6 months or up to a year, we want to be done with the entire game and release the game, okay? What we were hoping to be in December, kind of, before all the early access stuff happening and before we realized what is missing, right? So chances are high that most of the stuff is already finished. As you said, Balor, maybe it was just almost done, but not 100%, so we're just not going to put it in this way, right? And then like a month later, we're going to release 2 classes and so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's not the case. And being disappointed so often, I kind of know, or at least I don't know. Like, obviously, I don't know, right? Maybe there's a GG employee sitting there watching this and be like, you guys are so idiots, man. You have no clue, right? But this is just the way I feel as a player, right? And when you pulled up the sheet and said like, hey, wait a second, there is so many classes missing, there's so many ascendancies missing, there's so many skills missing, weapon types missing, endgame missing, 3 campaign acts missing. That's why we got Cruel in the end, right? Because it was never the plan, like having act 1, 2, and 3 in Cruel. So there's 3 campaigns missing. And he said he wants to do it in like 6 months, but worst case like a year, which tells me maybe in 2 years, maybe in 3 years. Because as you already said, if they want to get to this like 6 to 12 months, they actually need to bring all the new classes every month. Like every month there need to be a patch. Here is a new class. Here's all the ascendancies. Here's the weapon type. Then 2 weeks later, bam, next class ascendancies, weapon types. Next class.
2.5 a month, by the way.
Yeah, that's even worse, right? It's not going to happen like that.
2.5 a month, assuming you want the final month, you want to be actually able to play the last 2. Because like people are saying it's 2 a month, but like the first month didn't count because that's when everything got released. And the last month, you need to have the release happen 4 weeks prior so that you have time to play it. Otherwise, you're releasing it with the full game. So it's actually 10. So it's actually 2.5 per.
On top of that, it's not only the classes, the weapon types, and the ascendancies missing. There is the campaign missing, right? With the separate act. So it could be that they need to bring 2.5 classes plus 1 act extra campaign. But also, what about the endgame mechanics? You said, or at least we know that they're kind of like had like 5 months time to bring some form of endgame. So we know there is a shit ton of endgame missing. And obviously, as knowing from PoE1, the endgame is going to be extended with every single league that is coming. So I guess the focus is to get the core aspect going, the campaign and the classes and those kind of things before actually investing a lot of time into the endgame, because this is a natural development, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they never gonna like be able to do that. And I don't believe that they are like 90% done with the classes. So if they are like giving us like 2 new classes or 1 new class every like 2 months, then we talk about like 5 years to be actually able. And then once everything is released, we also need like 3 or 4 months so people can play the game, millions of players, figure out all the game broken builds and whatnot, so we can actually balance the game in a certain extent. So if we bring the full release, yes, they're going to be meta builds. Yes, they're going to be overperforming builds and underperforming builds, but there is not like game-breaking bugs. So we need time as players as well to report all those things that are broken, which the developers haven't thought of, which extends the time
confirmed
scopes,
2035,
which extends the time phase even further, right? And as I said, I don't mind delaying PoE2 as it has been for the past years, right? But at least give us something else and don't delay PoE1 as well over and over and over again. And one point you said, hey, this is going to be 1 game with 2 separate endgame, or at least 2 separate early games and 1 endgame with PoE1. And then at some point, okay, PoE2 is going to be a separate game. So we're going to get more resources to PoE1 again to get that going again on its separate team. So that never happened either.
How do you do this perfect segue to the last talking point I wanted to bring up before we go overtime and end this hopefully on time, relatively? Are we actually happy with them putting all their eggs in one basket with PoE2 seemingly and putting PoE1 on the back burner for so long? Because whenever I bring it up with chat and like say, oh, this next league for PoE1 is going to be huge because now, you know, they got PoE2 out in early access. They can take the stress off there. There's no performance pressure there anymore. Now they can just focus on PoE1, letting that game shine where it can shine, because there's also no longer the pressure of PoE1 having to be the fulfillment of the vision, right? Because PoE2 is the vision now, so PoE1 can be the player base's vision, can be the game of the zoomers, of the theory crafters, of the economists, of the like 3 screens at once exploders and stuff like that. But yeah, the more I bring that up and the more I want that to happen, the more people in chat are like, yeah, copium shipment, and you know, it's not going to happen. PoE1 is going to die now. PoE2 is the death of PoE1. So I wonder where you guys stand on that. Like, do you want that to happen actually, or are you happy with only playing PoE2 for the rest of your life?
So it's a bit weird. I'm going to start here. I don't think this is exactly what's going to happen. So I think having 2 good products is better than 1. And basically what they went for quite intentionally is trying to make PoE2 not PoE1. I think this is something they've been really, really adamant about. And I think what we will see is actually a lot of things. Actually, they might disappoint, in my opinion, a lot of players because they might nerf down a lot of things that we consider normal in PoE2. So they might actually try to slow down the game quite strongly, intentionally. And I can very much imagine that PoE1 and PoE2 will be very different games by the time they'll release. So I think what we'll probably see is that PoE1 will receive quite a few polishing updates as well. I can see them eventually abandoning PoE1. Maybe it depends, of course, how the games will be, how successful PoE2 will be, what the expectation will be. But I think what they'll try to do next, and this is honestly what so this is my strong conviction. I think they'll try to do updates to PoE1. I consider it's a very similar code base. So to bring some people back from PoE2 to PoE1. So I can actually imagine the gem system from PoE2 making it into PoE1 in the next upcoming league update. Of course, to reshape a whole bunch of things, but I can totally see this happening. I don't see it's impossible considering the large-scale reworks GG has done. I mean, take a look at the Scarab rework or the Transfigured Gem rework. I can totally imagine this happens as well, and then they'll bring it back to PoE1. So I do think PoE1 will eventually become kind of the less popular choice by far. It already is. And I understand the disappointment with GEG since they're basically pushing deadlines ahead a lot more. But then again, I do want to bring a little bit of a positive note here. I do believe that this has been it'll be a lot more streamlined now. I think they had been like crunching like crazy to get the amount of content they have out right now. We do know, we've seen them playing Druid already. There've been like Druid demos. They've seen Hunter demos. There've been like a few template informations out there. So in many cases, I think I actually don't think we've seen a lot of the duelists, so this is something that's completely new. And Shadow is also something that's like missing a lot of information. But I think in many cases they do have a lot of content prepared already, and now they can actually have really separate teams. So for instance, the teams designing the skills and working on the animations on those are very different teams. That are teams, let's say, necessary to port gems in PoE1 or teams necessary in order to work on the campaign. So I can actually see them getting into a more and better timeline compared to what we have before. At least it's me maybe coping. But I do believe that PoE1 will be relevant for at least a couple more years, maybe with a lot less popularity. But I think they'll actually give it their best to kind of promote PoE1, maybe do like a few things. If you play PoE1, you get some unlocks in PoE2 as well or something like that.
I suspect that they don't want to abandon PoE1 at all. I don't expect in the next few years that there'll be any abandoning to PoE1. I think it'll receive probably significantly more support than it has in the last year or so, because the last year has been fucking rough, to be honest. But I think that will pick up again. I do think there's a world where PoE1 gets abandoned, but I don't think that's necessarily the goal or even really on the charts, unless they keep putting a lot of work into PoE1 and then 50,000 or 100,000 people are the only people who return because everyone's still busy on PoE2 and nobody cares. And like, if that happens and they're like, man, we're putting work into this, but like everybody just loves PoE2 and doesn't like PoE1 anymore, that's where I can see it get abandoned. I kind of hope that doesn't happen. And I do want, despite the fact that I'm playing a like multiple screens in every direction explode build right now, I don't think this build should exist in PoE2. And I hope they take it away from me. I legitimately hope they take it away from me, because the only way I get to enjoy PoE1 and PoE2 is if they become different games.
Yep.
But right now I'm playing a PoE1 build. I'm playing one of the most fun PoE1 builds I've ever played. It's amazing. But if you don't keep them different, if they're the same game, essentially, if I'm just like full screen explode over here, one shot everything, and full screen explode over here, one shot everything, then I'm never going to want to play PoE1 again, because PoE2's got better graphics, better feel, better looks, Despite the fact that crafting is shit, which is a whole different topic, better itemization, better feeling when you upgrade gear. I can tell what's happening. Some outlier cases, some huge crafting issues in crafting. That's a whole different topic, but don't worry about that. But like, you can feel your upgrades more, everything matters more, individual pieces of gear feel really good. The little tier system on gear that's on the ground actually gets me excited to see something on the ground when it says tier 5. Unfortunately, correct me if I'm wrong, we'll not be able to filter for that. I don't think
Not
that's
yet.
a thing we even have the ability to filter for. So that's unfortunate. Hopefully that comes, but whatever. Everything about
there we are.
PoE2, all those things feel better. If you leave PoE2, if you leave these builds in that just full screen one shot in every direction, why will I ever return to PoE1? So I think the only chance it has to maintain both games properly is to do the goal of PoE2, which was slower, more methodical combat, things that matter, engagement with the mobs, not blow up 3 screens at once. And if you successfully do that, and then you let PoE1 be the blaster, blow screens, do all of the stuff, then I'm going to be excited to come back to your PoE1 leagues every time. And then I'm going to be excited to go play PoE2, which is a different game every time. But if they're the same, PoE1's going to die.
I do agree on that, but I always compare it like, because every time you bring up those like, hey, they are the same and blah, 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 I think about World of Warcraft because there is like this retail, this current version, which had like 25 different expansions already. The game is out since like 21 years by now, and there is a certain player base that just says like, man, I would want to play, to relive the past, having this classic World of Warcraft server. And then Blizzard finally stepped in and said, okay, here you have it, right? And the player base was insane, right? For half a year, maybe a year, and now it's completely dead. There is servers that have like 5 people on them, entire servers with 5 people, because nobody cares about it anymore. But then they still go back to like the retail stuff, right? And then there's another expansion coming out for the classic, and they try different things. So I do think that there are similarities there, but in the end of the day, I do agree with you that currently what all I'm trying to do is getting PoE1 feeling in PoE2. Because this is what is fun. And that's what I'm currently experiencing with my Widowhail Spark character. I have 500% projectile speed, and that means as soon as I cast Spark, the projectiles travel to 2 screens away. They clear monsters. I see loot dropping there where I don't even see the loot icon on the minimap yet because I'm too far away from it. But I like that. What else did I do? I stacked movement speed jewel, so I'm having like 60% movement speed rather than just 35 on my boots, right? So I'm getting this like, hey, my character starts to feel faster, and I screen clear, right? I hope they're gonna nerf it. I hope this not should be a thing, right? But in the end of the day, all I'm looking for right now is PoE1 feeling in PoE2. So I don't know, but I still think that PoE1 is completely gonna die as soon as the game PoE2 is polished out. Like, it's just gonna happen. I don't think, and yeah, it's probably gonna
maintain the same feeling though. If they come back and say, hey, all those things that we're doing, take those away. They're all way too quick. Slow the game back down. Do this. And instead, like, the fast builds are like just the mercenary explosion shot where you get to like, blow up 1 whole pack, but not 3 whole screens. Right? And then rare monsters don't get 1 shot in that pack and you have to engage them separately. And like, if they slow that down, like, it sounded like they intended to. They take away the top end. They maintain a different feeling. If they maintain a different feeling, there's no reason PoE1 can't go on forever. It only becomes a problem if you can do the same thing in both.
Yeah, I would like to add that they have yet to come up with that unique PoE2 feeling that you're chasing in PoE2, right? Because like you said, you're right now chasing the PoE1 high of solving the issues that the game throws at you. And that hooks back to what Neversing said in the beginning, that it's almost certain that they've only worked on this endgame for like 6 months since the June playtest on the console playtest. I think that's what sold them when we gave feedback. Everyone gave them feedback. We need to see the endgame. The impression is bad because people only see the early slow gameplay, but they want to see how the character power is at endgame. And that's when they got that feedback again, probably after the earlier in the year where they had people for the PC playtest. And that's when they pivoted the development. So the end game that we have now is just very bare bones, them throwing ideas at the game and building a sort of playground for people to experience some sort of end game, so that with that data that they can collect there, they can construct this PoE2 end game experience that is not really in the game yet, right?
I agree. I think you're totally on point. I think the reason you chase the PoE1 feeling in PoE2 is because the PoE2 endgame is currently the PoE1 endgame, and it obviously and clearly doesn't feel very good. Clearing these huge maps and looking for the last rare, that's just not the way mapping should be. I don't know what mapping should be like. It could be like small arenas, objectives, whatever else, but this just clearing labyrinthian maps and looking for the last rare, it's not engaging. That's why the thing that is engaging is Breach, because this is the best feeling thing right now in PoE2. I think if they work on that and make other league mechanics more engaging, make the actual mapping experience better, make this whole thing less of a backtrack simulator and a better gameplay experience by itself, I think people will be looking for different experience and other different things will feel engaging. Imagine if the gameplay would be, imagine if the leading league would be Ritual. It would have completely different feelings. People would be like looking, okay, how can I make my build feel the most tanky and the most capable of taking on whatever the Chaos Crab Rituals rose to me? It would have completely different priorities. No one would be looking like for ways to screen clear, but looking for ways to clear rituals as fast as possible and find rituals as fast as possible because you want to shop for those sweet, sweet goodies. Now, right now, Ritual usually sells you like 2 magic items and maybe 3 rare ones and 2 augments, so it's not really the case. So I think the way that the game just works is that the dopamine-filled loot explosion and experience grind right now is simply Breach. There's nothing that even compares to that. So they need to solve that problem, and then we can maybe look into what the actual PoE2 endgame should look like.
Yeah, I do agree on that, because like literally like a half an hour before the podcast started, I was having like this Breach proc. Like I had 14 breaches, I think, because there is tablets that have a chance to proc 3 additional breaches, and that also proc. So I had one map with 14 breaches, and I'm running 200 rarity on my Sparker, right? And I run into the breach. I just like trying to kill monsters, but I opened another one. And technically, when I remember when I started PoE2, I was scared to open a breach because the first 10 monsters that are like spawning would most likely kill me. You know?
Yep.
Now I'm like, oh, a breach. I run in, I hold down my spark, everywhere, splinters, you know, exalts, whatever drops, you know, sometimes a divine. That's fun. And this is why I say, like, at the moment, I have no, like, interest, not even a close interest of doing expedition, of doing ritual, of doing anything else, but I would rather have 20 breaches in my map. Because that is currently fun, you know, so...
Here's something worth considering. The first run through...
Just really quick, last thoughts, BalorMage. Right, we need to round up. We're already over time, and like you get to have the last word. I was gonna say last word before Neversink spoke, but didn't want to interject. Then before MB, but now you have the last word, and then we're gonna close it out.
That feeling of PoE2 that was like sold to us as like their vision, I had that feeling the entire acts 1 to 3. Nailed. I had less of that feeling in Cruel, not none, but less. Obviously, I think I would continue to have that feeling in the real Act 4, 5, and 6. That was a great feeling. That day 1 and 2, because I didn't get to maps on day 1, but like that was the PoE2 I had envisioned, and it felt amazing. So, if they can somehow transition that, but a bit faster, obviously, because we need more power in the end game. But if they can somehow make our end game feel like that in PoE2, then PoE1's safe forever. Blasting over there, meaningful engagement with smaller amounts of mobs over here, and everything will be good.
All right. That's some positive note to end on. I'm really hyped to see more of what PoE2 is all about in the next update. I want to thank everyone for coming and watching. Thanks Neversink, MB Extreme, for coming and being a guest on this episode. So insightful, very helpful. And everyone on this panel, I think, has a Patreon or a Twitch channel where you can go and individually support the creators in their journey. Stay in touch with Neversink to get updates about the item filter and filter blade. and all that stuff. MB Extreme for the new gambling videos, Balor for some helpful build guides and new player tips and tricks and whatnot, right? And I myself have started a new one-on-one interview series called Podcasts, where I already interviewed Pi by Pi and Vel from the PoE community, and I'm gonna do more episodes in the new year, just as much as Faded is gonna continue in the new year, because we're not gonna speak before the new year, guys. Take it easy, get a super good transition into 2025, and pray and send the energy to New Zealand, because the devs deserve and need it. And yeah, this episode, as always, uploaded in full on YouTube and Spotify, and the next one probably in a week from now. Until then, have a wonderful time. Thanks, everyone, and bye-bye when I find the outro.
I know a lot of people want to send blankets or water. Just send your cash.